There's a bit of a kerfuffle yesterday, which we covered, of course, the CNN poll, which shows President Trump down by 14 points. Well, that actually drew the attention, not just down 14 points, but large swings also in the disapproval. Even some of you were saying, why do you trust the polls, et cetera. Look, we don't trust the polls, but I do trust polling averages generally, which were off by approximately 2% last time around, which had a disproportionate impact in the Electoral College. And if you look broadly, which is that the polling average around this time is not even close to what it was last time around. So all of those caveats aside, well, essentially the Trump campaign has retained counsel, actually McLaughlin and Associates. And so President Trump tweeted a memo yesterday that was written to him by his own attained polling firms, basically saying, the latest skewed media polls must be intentional. It is clear that NBC, ABC, and CNN, who have operatives like Chuck Todd and other Democrats, are consistently underpolling Republicans and therefore reporting biased polls. Now, remember, they're not 100% wrong, which is that in many of the way that these polls are conducted, the likely polling versus registered, which is that it gives Republicans approximately like a 2% edge whenever you correct for those types of things. But that doesn't make up for 14%, right? There's another 12. And even when you remove the margin of error and you take the average of every single national poll, we see a general increase of Biden plus 5. This is not the same situation that we saw last time around. And I think it's just very convenient for a lot of Republicans to just sit back and say, oh, the polls were totally wrong.
The polls are wrong.
Last time around. How wrong were they, and in what way? And what way can we correct our analysis of it this time around? And so, look, I think things are very bad right now. I don't know if they're 14% bad, but I think, somewhere in the 7 to 10 range is not far off from reality.
Especially when you see polling in Senate races, too, that has shifted. Exactly. I mean, look, any one poll can be totally wrong and an outlier. But what we try to do here is, rather than cherry pick, also look at the averages, which is what we did yesterday. We looked at all the swing state averages, because also national poll, Electoral College is more likely to benefit President Trump. So when you look at all those swing state averages of all the polls from those swing states, you find him down significantly in Michigan, you find him down in Wisconsin, you find him down in places like Arizona and North Carolina. So you can ignore all that data if you want to, and you could even say, look, last time the polls in two critical swing states really were off. I believe Michigan and Pennsylvania, they were off outside of the margin of error by about 2 points, and that was enough to make the difference. So even if you factor that in, and even if you on top of that factor in that these polls are still looking at all registered voters versus likely voters. And you are right, once you put that likely voter screen in, that tends to benefit Republicans more. Even if you add all of those things in, you're still in a very, very ugly place. And look, on the one hand, in terms of messaging, it's good for the Trump campaign to say, oh, the polls were wrong, so just ignore your lying eyes, everything's fine. But if that actually makes them immune to information and unable to change direction, that becomes a problem for them. And I don't think that it is just public messaging. I think they have internalized this idea that the polls are wrong and really everything's fine.
Yeah, and that's what I want to caution against, which is, look, if you're down, we got 6 months to go. We can get this thing going, right? Like, kicking it into high gear. One of the issues that we saw in the Romney 2012 campaign there was this whole unskew the polls movement. And we all remember how that one worked out. Like, I think it was Ann Romney legitimately believed, because of this movement, that Mitt Romney was going to be president of the United States. And they basically, the people who drove this, had to apologize. We have some sound of that from the year 2012 on Fox News. Let's take a listen.
I think that the reason that the prediction that I made was wrong is that I was criticizing the polling because I said that it reflected the same turnout model as there was in 2008. Blacks are now 13% of the vote, not 11. Latinos are 10, not 8. And people under 30 are 19, not 17. The previous numbers were the 04 model, and I thought things would return to that. They didn't. What this is saying is this is the new America. This isn't your father's America.
See, this is excuse making, and this is what I mean. Whenever you start parsing and be like, oh, well, I assume, listen, nobody can predict the results. What you can look at is the polling on this stuff and say, hey, this is bad.
Things are moving in the wrong direction.
Right, so
not much you can know.
Instead of saying unskew the polls down, look, maybe you're not down by 14 points. Nobody thinks you really are. I mean, nobody thinks that's the consensus. Maybe you're down by 7. 7 can happen. He was down by 7 against Hillary at the beginning, and then we saw that turnaround. Obviously, you can hold your ground in swing states. It's razor thin in North Carolina, Arizona. It's pretty close in Michigan and in Pennsylvania. Focus on that and use it as a way to get your base to say we're going to work 10x hard, because you can see the enthusiasm for people who support Donald Trump is double in the Republican Party what it is the enthusiasm for Joe Biden. Nothing fuels people like feeling like an underdog. And if anything, feeling like you're on the winning team makes you complacent.
That's true.
And that is what...
Ask Hillary Clinton.
Ask Hillary Clinton. So look, use it as fuel. Don't focus on unskew the polls and all this other nonsense, because it puts you in a very dangerous, precarious position.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember covering that 2012 election so vividly. And this was Fox every single day. They were going with this unskew the polls. I mean, they were all in on this. And so when Romney ended up losing, like they actually, but yeah, I mean, and it wasn't close.
Yeah.
Their whole audience was completely floored. I mean, they were completely caught off guard. The Romneys themselves were caught off guard. That night in the election coverage, right, Megyn Kelly was anchoring, and they had Karl Rove on there saying, well, Ohio, I don't know about this. I mean, that kind of like made up math went all the way up until you could no longer deny it whatsoever. And so people were not able to act appropriately or get themselves in gear because they believed this nonsense that was being, this like phony math that was being ginned up. And so again, like, no, don't take the polls just at face value, especially not one poll that does, yes, the CNN poll is a bit of an outlier. But when you see the trend moving all in one direction, when you see the Senate polls all moving in one direction, when you see the swing state polls all moving in one direction, that is real information that should be paid attention to. And by the way, right now, he is outside of the range of, this is not where he was versus Hillary. This is much worse on average, not just with the CNN, on average overall, this is much worse than how he was positioned versus Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, exactly. And we should keep that in mind.
Tomorrow on Rising, Executive Director of the Urban Reformist Institute, Joel Kotkin, is going to join us with his insights.
And friend of the show, Kyle Kulinski, he's going to be here too. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to never miss a video. And like and share as well. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Have a great day, guys.